Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ReQuest and the vast and ominous Comic Vault. It's another two for free. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my wonderful co-host, Austin, the Day Ghost. He's shredding on his air guitar again. Look at him go. I think you're still muted.
Yeah, I forgot I was still muted. I was too busy.
It's very complicated, you know. He's got to keep all of his technology straight. Like, it's hard to shred on your air guitar and remember that you're muted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
He's got to deal with his amp and everything. Sound balance.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got an air mixer.
All I said was this time I remembered the song went longer, so I just awkwardly stopped. But then it was more awkward because I was muted.
Tonight, by request, I could have worn either shirt tonight. Tonight, by request, we're going to review a book that I almost did several years ago with Dan Torrey, who I invited, but he did not have time to be here tonight. So he and I were talking. It's been a little while since he's been on the channel. So we're going to try to review something in a couple of weeks, comic-wise or otherwise. But, and I don't know, it could be a Flash thing. Dan's a big Flash guy. I wish he was here because I'm not. And Austin doesn't know this character super well either. So we're going to do our level best. This is a request. We do whatever the requester asks us to do. And today, Spencer Nielsen, who is Connor's brother, like I said on the Captain Logan show last night, the Nielsens have taken over the channel this week. It's The Flash Born to Run, which is technically also The Flash Year 1, although it was never traded that way. And that's an odd title, given that it's not really a Year 1 in the traditional sense, like Batman Year 1 and some other Year 1s. It's kind of more like, I don't know, Summer 1.
Yeah, like 3-month 1.
Yeah, it's an origin before it's a Year 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you think Year 1, you think, okay, we passed the origin. What's like the early days of this character's adventures, his first being a superhero? And this is much more just straight up origin. Or I should say Waid kind of putting his own spin, adding to an origin that was there already, but being really faithful to it already or entirely. And we'll talk about that. This comes out in 1991. This was in the regular Flash ongoing. This is what, Austin, 62 to 65?
65.
So it's only 4 issues.
Yeah, not too bad. I think the other one that we thought it was Flash Year 1, the new book was, I think, 6 or 7.
It's like 6 or 7, yeah. There's a new Barry Allen origin, or a Year 1, whatever that book does. I read 3 pages of it before I messaged Spencer and was like, you know what, I bet this is wasn't what you were actually asking for. Am I reading the right thing? And he was like, no, Born to Run. And I was like, you know what? You did tell me before it was Born to Run, but I had it listed just as Year 1. Why'd you call it that? He said, because that's what it says on the covers. It is Year 1, Born to Run. It's weird. Comics, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows what's going on with this book.
So yeah, that other thing is also in the regular Flash ongoing that's current, I think, the numbers right now. 2019, Joshua Williamson did something with Barry Allen because he hasn't had enough origin material. This is something of a fan favorite book. When you hear people bandy about Flash story titles, this is one of the big ones that comes up, and sometimes kind of the only one you'll hear some people mention, which is interesting. I want to say, going back to it, I'm pretty sure I've read this before, but it didn't really come back to me, Austin. I don't know if it's just been too long or if it's just that I'm not enough of a Flash guy to remember if I've sat down and looked at this. What is your history with this as a singular character in comics?
I have read the first 2 volumes of the New 52 book, at least the first one. I can't remember if I read. It was weird. I'm actually looking at it right now.
Remember how sketchy that was?
Right there. Yeah, the New 52 Flash is not great.
Did you ever read any of Jeff Johns' Flash that led up to Flashpoint?
No, the Flash has always been one of those characters that I've wanted to read, but never really did. And then when I finally jumped on it, my starting place was New 52. So
I think a lot of people had that with various characters, where that seemed like a very clear jumping on point for things. And then with some characters, that worked quite nicely, like Supergirl. And with other characters, that was a really bad idea. Not a good starting place. Swamp Thing, not the place to start.
Yeah, and Flash, like from what I remember, the status quo is really weird in that book. Green Arrow is also not a good place to start with New 52.
No. No,
Uh,
Green Arrow has a good New 52 run, and then what's before and after that is terrible.
yeah, and that was also my starting place for Green Arrow.
Oh, interesting. See, I was jumping onto stuff new just before all of that happened, so I was in kind of a nice place because New 52 was weird because the universe was in pretty good shape right then, and it was somewhat baffling that you would reboot then. Like, maybe the numbers weren't great, but, a lot of the stories were good. They had a really good stable of writers and artists right then, so it was a weird time to start up because I was invested in some things, and then and now we're going to reboot. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Hopefully that works
Yeah,
out, and then it didn't. I don't want to spend this whole time talking about New 52. That ends up being inevitable with us sometimes, I guess, but...
yeah. Well, and there was a period when I was a teenager where my go-to starting place for Marvel was like initial like starting it like Stan Lee era runs, and my starting place for DC was New 52. So, like it definitely comes up a bit when we get into DC things.
I had hardly ever read any solo Flash before Waid. Pardon me, because I've never read all of Waid's run, but Jeff Johns' one, and I didn't read all of that either. But I was picking up random disparate issues as they were coming out here and there because people were talking about how good that book was, and that was kind of. Sometimes I would try a book that people would make a big deal out of. This, as I was getting started, getting into current, this is like the big wonderful thing that everybody's reading right now. You should take a look at it, and that was kind of. I guess my main introduction to solo stuff. And when I was a kid, I probably had a couple of issues here and there of like Bronze Age stuff. And then of course, Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I probably read 3 or 4 times, and none of it ever sticks with me. Like we've reviewed that now. I always forget how exactly Barry Allen dies and what exactly happens with Wally West, and that affects this, and we'll talk about that because if you don't know that, this book is confusing and the plotting seems very sloppy and muddled, but it actually isn't. You just have to know your stuff. I'm getting ahead of myself, but...
Well, doesn't Barry... I've never read Crisis, but doesn't Barry die in that the same way he does in the TV show? Where he like disintegrates while running on the cosmic treadmill.
Yeah, and then the idea is there's like a paradox where there's this big question as to whether he gave himself his powers in the first place. And like he either went back in time and created the bolt of lightning that gives himself his powers in the first place, and or he is somehow his soul is like one with the Speed Force now.
Don't you just love comics?
Yeah, exactly. So Flash is complicated because there's lots of time travel. The Speed Force is kind of a mind-blowing thing. Mark Waid invented that, if I'm not mistaken, and this alludes to it some, maybe, and we'll talk about that because there's a lot of discussion in this about coincidence and how implausible it is that Wally West has the exact same accident that happens to Barry Allen that gives him his powers while he's standing next to Barry Allen, no less. The very moment Barry Allen is explaining to him the accident that gave him his powers, the exact same thing happens to him. And that's because Mark Waid is just playing it straight and doing exactly what it was in the Bronze Age in 5960 when Wally West was created. And I had this question while I was reading this book, Austin. And like I said, this is a weird read for me because I don't know enough about the Flash, so I feel neither qualified to review or even read this book. And I will say, I enjoyed this a lot. There's a lot of charm to this book. A lot of the personal stuff with Wally West resonated with me as a singular standalone piece. It doesn't work. I need to know more things surrounding it, and I don't. So I did some research, and I learned some things, and then it was I once I understood some of the surrounding stuff, it was kind of easier to appreciate and stomach. But it made me wish that more of those explanations were in this, because again, getting ahead of myself. Sometimes, Austin, I feel like this reads like it's supposed to work as an introduction to this character, and it doesn't really, because the whole story's not there.
Yeah. No, that's just certain questions that we both had. Like right before we started the show, you messaged me to be like, "Oh, hey, I did research and here's the answers for these things." They do have explanations, just not here.
And then so I'm saying that like the story's not complete. It feels that way being a novice at this, not knowing this character very well. But then I find myself going, how many like Batman or Superman or Spider-Man or especially like X-Men stories have I read that if I wasn't in the know, I would feel the same way about them?
Hmm. Yeah, for
It's
sure. I
hard to
guess
know
it's
because I
more
know what I know.
complicated. Yeah, no, exactly. I guess it's more complicated than at least like a Batman thing, because there's more like powers and pseudoscience stuff going on.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, that is true too.
Well, and that leads me to the thing that I started that whole diatribe with and ran away with myself, which is, as I was reading this, I was wondering how come this couldn't be a like John Byrne level, because I remembered this as being like Mark Waid, because I thought I'd read this, and now I'm not sure if I ever did, because I remembered this as being like Mark Waid's John Byrne level origin reboot for the Flash, and that's not what it is at all. Because he has to go back and kind of like in a character-driven way restate the thesis, right? And
Mhm.
he probably adds some things to it that weren't there, but I don't know that he's contradicting anything. And I found myself wondering how come it couldn't be a flat out reimagining that doesn't have all of the coincidence, where he doesn't, because I wonder if he invented the Speed Force to explain this bizarre coincidence, like if that's the whole reason we have the Speed Force. I don't know that for sure because it's not even brought up here, but it is, I think, crystal clear that whenever, because it comes up so often, that whenever anybody is questioning, did Barry Allen somehow give Wally West his powers and it wasn't just coincidence, whenever it's asking that question, it's actually telling you, no, that really is what it is. We'll put a pin in it and explain it to you later. That has to be what it is. There's a part where his grandfather, the scientist guy, straight up says, "We'll deal with that later," as if it's the book saying, "Down the road, there's an explanation. We'll deal with this later." And I think the explanation for why it can't be a straight up reimagining, because after Crisis, of course, lots of characters got reworked and origins were like tailored to more modern day and just simplified and stuff. I think the reason it can't be done here is because everybody remembers Barry Allen and that he died after Crisis. So like they're stuck with the Bronze Age stuff in a way that Superman is not, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to say, I guess, because you'd have to like rework all of that because you're dealing with a legacy character. So it would almost be like if uh, Dick Grayson or Batman at that point, like when year one comes out, and we do his origin instead, and we have to like makeshift everything before that into a new story.
Yeah,
Like it's just kind of more complicated.
it's a good point, and it just made me wonder how many other characters, because I just can't remember, and some of them I wouldn't know. Like how many other characters post Crisis have this, where like it would have been really nice if we could have just flat out started over, because the whole point of Crisis, even though it is like one of the most complex, mind-bending, hard to get your head around what's even happening events in stories and comics, of course one of the first big all-encompassing company crossover kind of events, the whole point of it was to reboot. The whole point of it was to simplify, and just like New 52, but better. There were characters that it just was impossible, if you were going to stick with the events of that and the continuity of that, to totally start over with. It couldn't be done.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So some characters will, and then other characters just never seem to reboot.
Well, Austin, give us a quick rundown of Born to Run.
Okay, so Born to Run is a story about Wally West meeting his grandfather and finding a little scrapbook of his origin, from when like the Iris made years ago. And Iris and Barry are both dead at this point, so he's going through it, and he basically just relives his origin through looking at the scrapbook. And it's so Wally West, when he's 10, I think he is in this book, he goes to visit Iris, and he hangs out with Barry, who becomes the Flash with him because he's a huge Flash fan. But Wally, of course, doesn't know that they're the same person.
And
Um,
Flash is keeping his identity secret from everyone at this point. Iris doesn't know,
yeah,
the grandfather doesn't know, nobody knows.
yeah, exactly. And
And I'm reading potentially, I'm probably reading too far into this. I'm reading potential frustrations from Waid in this here and there, where he's a little handcuffed, but doing the best he can with what he's got to work with.
oh, okay, interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
And like, I think he's having fun with it. I think he really enjoyed writing this story. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's doing his best to make this stuff within at least the like modern sensibilities of 1991, as realistic in comics as possible. And there's just some hokey, silly stuff he's stuck with.
Hmm.
As
Yeah, in an
hokey as
era where
comics were even in
Nirvana's
the early
about to get
90s,
big.
there's stuff he's stuck with. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Said in an era where Nirvana's about to get big.
Among other things, but sure.
Yeah, yeah. So the Flash is explaining to Wally how he got his powers, and then kablam, Wally gets his powers. And then after that, it's basically just like a pretty standard superhero, like kid gets powers,
Boy, we are
and
consistent
then
with that onomatopoeia, aren't we?
yeah, oh kablam,
Yeah, we got a double kablam there.
yeah. No, and it changes from yellow or orange to red. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
I
It
put
should have
I
been yellow to red though to match the Flash's colors.
I put both of these full page spreads in because I like them.
Yeah.
They're
Although I
great
don't know,
pencils by.
his pose is a little different with both of them.
Well, we're probably just seeing like seconds after this one, right?
Just joking.
Greg LaRocque on pencils, who I'm not sure I've seen in anything. I probably have with early '90s
Yeah,
comics,
that
but
name
that's not a
sounds
name that
familiar.
jumps out.
Yeah, that name sounds familiar, but I can't exactly pin it.
By the
Um,
way, welcome, folks watching live. We haven't interacted with you or said anything to you yet, but thanks a bunch for being here. And if you know who or other things that Greg LaRocque has drawn, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching after the fact, and we appreciate you guys checking out the show. Anyway, so he gets his powers.
and then he learns how to use them.
Yep.
The end.
Well, not exactly.
No, not exactly, but like basically, like he learns how to use his powers. He goes on some adventures with the Flash.
It's a wish fulfillment fantasy for him, right? Like it's a coming of age thing, but it turns into a coming of age thing. But it starts as the kid who gets the ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like all he wants is to hang out with the Flash, to be the Flash. He gets to do all of that. And then it all comes crushing down for him at the end of it.
Hmm. Yep, exactly.
Because he finds out that he has a bizarre illness that has a couple of potential explanations, but we never fully understand it, that readers of The Flash are already familiar with, but I was not, so I was lost on this. And I think Austin had the same thing.
Yeah, the whole illness thing with Kid Flash is very strange because it just all of a sudden goes, "Oh no, using your powers makes you sick. You might die." And then at the end, he just uses them, and he's okay.
Yeah. You're expecting some sort of consequences for it. Like he has to use his powers to save his father from a tornado and from being crushed by a tree, and then and I guess there's supposed to be kind of some irony or some poetry to the fact that it's in the middle of a lightning storm again, and it looks like for a minute I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna face some kind of massive consequences for using his powers and for pushing himself so hard, right? And
Hmm.
like he'll land in the hospital at the end or something, and that doesn't happen. He's fine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just he uses his powers and he saves the day and he's all good.
And then in the future, of course, he's the Flash, and he's been using his powers all this time. And if you've never read any other Flash comics, there's no explanation as to why there were no problems with his powers. And so you're thinking again. This is us, newbies with this material that have not read the rest of Waid's run, going and stuff before this, going, okay, so why wasn't there any problem with his powers? Like the assumption I have to make is that he still dealt with it after this because it's in Crisis that I had to read about this later because I haven't read Crisis in a while. But it's in Crisis that he's cured of that illness. So I guess he can use his powers. He just gets really sick when he does,
Hmm.
and he does, and so he's got to be careful and not do it very often. But what are the consequences to this when he's got to? That was honestly my biggest issue with this. I think is just that's touted up by the end as the big conflict and the big kind of ticking time bomb, and then there's really no problem at the end.
Yeah, no, exactly. And
It's a little too easy.
even
Even
though,
once I know about the Crisis thing and how that's resolved later with the anti-monitor, which is also really contrived and easy. But like, there's an anti-monitor beam that fixes his illness. The end. Now he can be the Flash. Okay. But
Superboy punched somebody so hard that the universe changed and got rid of his illness. I don't
exactly.
know, it's the comics, but
Comics.
it,
But that doesn't
there should be
that
something
doesn't
in this
fix this
book.
ending,
Yeah.
right?
No, no, I agree. No, the fact that you had to look it up, I think, is not great.
Yeah. Uh, but anyway, so that's more or less what happens in the book. Austin, take us anywhere you want to take us with this.
Oh God, where do I want to start? Uh, hmm. I guess we should start just like early on, like with his actual origin and kind of building up to that.
Yeah.
And his origin is like super convenient, as we've said before, which like I get is, his original origin. Um, but I don't know. Like it kind of feels worse to me because we keep mentioning how convenient it is, and like you said there's that moment that kind of made you think like, oh, we'll pick up on this later. I thought it was just kind of hand wavy, but you're right, it is probably that he'll deal with it later.
I read this twice and it did feel kind of hand wavy at first, but the thing
Hmm.
is, it comes up twice. We keep dealing with it. And at the end, the aftermath of the tornado thing, I really thought would be Wally in the hospital or Wally realizing he's never going to be able to use his powers again or, he's got some kind of big health consequence or something. No, we don't talk about any potential issues with that. We spend the rest of the issue mostly talking about his I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. He's we're mostly talking about
The idea that Barry maybe gave him his
yeah,
powers.
the origin thing, and that's it because that's the whole point of this. I think if there's supposed to be a mystery about it, more of it should be revealed in this.
Hmm.
Because this on its own, I don't know what I'm reading. I don't understand the point of that. And in the grander run, I'm sure it works great. And it seems like unanimously, Flash fans and especially big Wally West fans really love this and think that it's one of the great origins. I need the rest of it because I don't understand that just reading this.
Hmm. Yeah, because if they build on it later, that's one thing. But just in the moment reading it, it felt like, oh yeah, like we know this is kind of hokey and weird. So
Yeah,
we're like kind of making fun of it. Okay, moving on. Uh, but that always plays worse for me because it's like, yeah, we know we suck. Okay, so why are you still sucking?
Yeah, and again, if you read the rest of this run, I guarantee you that's not how it reads.
No, and that probably
And
is.
that just
And
makes this a part of a greater whole, right? Like,
yeah, no, of
I'm just going to
course.
double down on this doesn't stand alone.
hmm No, it's just weird and just the few issues that we had. And I think we both kind of had questions about that.
Because you get to the end, and Wally and his grandfather are both saying, like, we're never going to fully understand like how this works. It does seem too coincidental. I've always said that you can tell stories about coincidence because coincidence happens. I think it is a mistake to have, especially when they pile up, and they do pile up here, where you have like multiple conveniences and coincidences that are never talked about as being odd, that they just come up that way. Like in real life, you'd be like, "That's really weird. Like, what are the odds of that?" And so I don't want to say as long as a character says, "Hey, that's weird," now it's okay. Like there is a threshold for that. But I think you can predicate a narrative on, yeah, here's a weird random happenstance that gets the ball rolling for a thing, because in real life that can happen. But then you got to be really careful that it doesn't keep happening, because then it's a cheat, then it's too easy. And you can also make stories that start with conceits, and that can be a conceit, and that's okay. It gets really tricky in heightened, stylized comics, and especially comics of a period where you comics are taking themselves in general less seriously than they do now. The pendulum has swung at Marvel, but you but you know what I mean. Like by and large, comics take themselves seriously now to the point where we're expecting the readers to criticize everything and to want some kind of an explanation for anything that happens. And in the early '90s, there's not as much of that, where you can still get away with a lot of crazy things based on, well, it's comics and they're for a younger audience, right? So it gets dicey here because it is very comic booky, but then it does have characters asking those logical questions, and it seems like again Waid is doing that because he's going to introduce the. I think that's got to be the explanation, right? He's going to introduce the Speed Force, and so he's building a mystery. But is it okay to have characters being, and I think everybody has to decide for themselves, right? Like I don't think there's any easy answer to this. Comic readers have to decide for themselves if it's okay for characters to ask questions they never have in 40 years of comics. Man, this is such a weird coincidence that I happen to get my powers the exact same way Barry Allen did, but aren't picking up on really obvious, clear clues that, like, my fiance is the Flash and things like that, right? Like it should be pretty clear to Iris by now that her fiance is the Flash, but comic logic, Superman and Lois Lane stuff, she doesn't get that because it's a conceit. She can't, so that we can maintain the status quo. So like, can you have both? And that's where it gets a little bit dicey.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And even just stuff like I get he's a kid, but like Barry will be in one spot and then he'll run right past Wally to become the Flash, and Wally will be like, "Whoa, like what was that?" Okay, move on. Like, oh, it's the Flash.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the Flash is he has an easier he would often have an easier time getting away with a secret identity in like being in the same place at the same time, or like being somewhere and then something happens and then he's got to rush off and put on his costume and come back and pretend like Wally West left and he showed up, or Barry Allen, or whichever Flash we're talking about, because of the impossibility of his powers. Like you'd be less likely to guess that he's the Flash because he can get around so fast. Because you'd be like, although it would also make it harder because it'd be like, how'd you disappear so quick? So like, I guess
Yeah.
it's a catch-22. Like in some ways, the leaving would be tougher. The coming back would be easier.
Basically, comics are
Actually,
just stupid. Yeah, is what we're getting at.
yeah. I mean, you don't want to overthink these things, but to Austin's point, it's asking us to in some cases
Mhm.
with a thing like this.
Yeah, exactly. There's just moments where it kind of makes you go like, "Hey, isn't this weird conceit thing kind of weird? And it's like, yeah, that's why you don't mention it. I don't know, but it comes down to just how you fall on it, I guess, like you said.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of begging for more of a revelation at the end about the origin, about how this actually happens. I feel a little
Yeah.
let down when I get to the end, and I don't mean to bash this because I know people love this, and I enjoyed it, and I'll talk more about stuff that really resonated with me about this in a minute. But it wasn't the superhero stuff. It was the family stuff. It was the relationship stuff. This is a father-son story. This is a surrogate father-son story. This is a sibling story. This is a story about a character who lives a simple life, who goes up in the Midwest. Like this is a story about a kid who doesn't get along with his parents, and his parents are good, reasonable people. They're not horrible. They're not beating him, but it's still not a great relationship. It's like boring drama, which is what most of us, or a lot of us anyway, have grown up with, where it feels like you have to have had the worst childhood of anybody on the planet, and then you look back and you go, I guess I had kind of a normal childhood, along with everybody else, but it felt really traumatizing at the time. There's a lot of stuff like that that really resonates with me with this, where like I feel like Waid is mining a lot of truth, speaking a lot of truth the about the American uh, youth experience. Like this is about a 10-year-old. It's not about a teenager. And we get an adult Wally West, but it's mostly just a bookend and just a device to tell the story. Most of this is about a 10-year-old kid, and those stories are hard to write. It's hard to make those believable and anything like likable and sympathetic. And there are places where I feel like this kid is really immature and not a lot of fun to read because he has to be that way to tell the story we're telling, maybe. But by and large, I feel like Waid does a really good job of making him a real character and reminding me of what it was like being his age. That's the stuff. I guess I said I was going to talk about that later. I've now done that. That's the stuff that I really appreciated about this book, not so much the superhero stuff.
Yeah, I think the only real superhero thing that I was kind of into was the initial opening scene with Wally as an adult where he's going through the airport.
That's thrilling.
Yeah, I thought that scene was pretty fun. And then after that, I wasn't as into a lot of the superhero stuff.
And it reads like an intentional introduction to Wally West if you've never seen Wally West before, which is why I'm baffled through the rest of this going, oh, I'm being left out because I don't know the history of this character. And I had a tough time with that because I'm getting a lot of his personality, his, I don't know if I want to say impulsiveness, but like his proactive nature, his willingness to take risks. He's not perfect. He doesn't always. I mean, he always wins because he's the superhero, but he'll do it in a kind of sloppy way. He refers to Barry Allen at one point in internal monologue when he's telling the story of when he was a kid and became the Flash. He calls Barry Allen like my perfect uncle.
Yeah,
And there's a contrast there where there's a reason I guess that people find Wally really relatable and Barry Allen kind of a plank of wood. I did kind of wonder by the end of this why people are so in love with this character over Barry Allen, because there were too many places where I couldn't enough tell the difference, but I felt like because again, it's not just about these 4 issues. Like this is kind of foundational. And so people that really know this character go back and go, this is a great origin for this character. I don't know this guy. Like I need more of an understanding of the real solid concrete differences between Barry Allen and Wally West. I've never had that because I haven't read enough of this stuff. But I felt like it was on its way at the beginning, where like I was starting to grasp some of it. And then we're with the kid the whole book. And that's fine, that's the story we're telling. But then I was a little bit frustrated going, I don't fully understand the difference between the like personality differences between the two guys, and I was wondering if you have that.
Not. Yeah, it's hard to say because like you said, we're stuck with Kid Wally West for so long. So and that's kind of the only real like adult Wally scene we get where he's the Flash.
Uh,
Um,
Roboter says Barry and Wally were completely different, and now they're just trade personalities. Remix says Barry has taken on a lot of Wally's character traits slash mythology since his return. Yeah, and I've heard a lot of that, and that's made it difficult for me to appreciate it because I've seen more often in extra media, of course, a Barry Allen that is Wally West before he's Barry Allen, or some kind of amalgamation between them. And I was really
that's kind of the
hoping.
legacy character curse, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because that happens with a lot of characters, right?
Yeah, that's also Ghost Rider. Like, Johnny Blaze kind of has that with Danny Ketch.
Yeah, well, and then, like, not to get too far off base, but sometimes it feels like Peter Parker is this weird amalgamation of every era of that character. Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it's like he's a blend of himself from various eras. Where it's like he's a teenager and an adult and a middle aged guy all at the same time.
And there's Deadpool in there.
I was hoping this would enlighten me more than it does on who exactly Wally West is versus the original Barry Allen. I'm not getting enough of them. I'm getting
Yeah,
some of it. I'm not getting enough of it. And again, that's not me dogging on this. That's me going, oh, this is a starting place. I have to keep reading, and maybe eventually I'll read this run because yes, that's comics. But the reason I'm frustrated is because for years people have told me, Cap, you have to read Born to Run, and I've read it now, and I'm like, you should have said you have to read all of it or more of it, or tell me how much more I have to read because this doesn't give me enough. It would be like if. Okay, this is not fair. This is me throwing people under the bus when I say it like this. What I was going to say is, it would be like if you said you need to read Simonson's Thor, but all you handed me was the Baldur mini. That's not fair. But it would be like you hand me like a portion of that, but not enough of it.
hmm yeah, it would be like I don't know if you were to get like the Ditko Doctor Strange and you were to read only the stuff before he meets Dormammu, which is kind of like okay, that's where it takes off.
Um,
But yeah, it's my understanding, and I mean I do think there is a bit of it
yeah,
in this, which is just that Barry Allen is kind of just hero man. And I mean, a
yeah.
lot of the kind of early DC characters are like that. And then Wally West is the more like jokier, like Spider-Man-y type Flash. But we, like I said, we only really get one scene with adult Barry as the Flash, and it's my probably my favorite part of the book. I really liked that scene.
Um, yeah. The best way I can describe this is uh, a superhero origin story through the traditional format of the how I spent my summer vacation story.
hmm Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like that's what it is. Kid doesn't like his parents. They're not getting along. I'm frustrated by how little of that I'm getting. And
hmm
then he goes to spend the summer with his aunt, who he thinks of as his best friend. He's only 10. His best friend is his aunt. That suggests that he wants to grow up quickly. And so like, there's a lot of personality stuff I'm getting about him as a kid. A lot of nice details. I also, by the way, I meant to say this earlier. I like all of the unreliable narrator in the internal monologue, in the adult description of what happens in the past, because he's remembering it from his lens of being 10, and so he'll say things like, I I got on the bus. It was 4,000 miles. It took 9 weeks. I swear by that. That's a clear exaggeration, but it's unreliable narrator. I found overall this to be a not as compelling narrative as I expected it to be, start to finish, with a lot of really good writing in it, and a lot of like super compelling and kind of thoughtful and human moments and details. Like the grander crux of it. like the villain plot with Mirror Master and his like not being allowed to use his powers, but then he does it at the end and he's fine and all of that. Like a lot of the story beats it didn't do a lot to me and didn't coalesce into anything. But with this, it was the smaller stuff.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if you had this, but did you find that some of the like training for his power stuff to kind of go by a little fast? Uh,
I didn't really think of that.
yeah, no, that's fair.
I thought there was an
I
odd contradiction in that. If I'm reading it right, like I said, I looked at this twice and it felt like a contradiction. It was almost like we made a story point out of Barry Allen having a weird memory. Like he says, okay, so I thought that when I got my powers, I just right away was able to use them and I had my powers. But now that I'm looking at you and it's taking a minute, because remember, he gets struck by lightning and then he feels fine and nothing happens. And he says, you know, Barry Allen says, like, you have to steer into it. And this seems to be everything in a lot of the stuff in this is thematic before it's really about the story it's telling, right? Where we use that as kind of a metaphor for being proactive and finding yourself. And he goes, so it's internal before it's external, is what I'm saying. So Barry says you've got to steer into it. You've got to be proactive. You have to kind of like find your powers.
Mhm.
And then you get to the end, and the scientist says, well, Barry, there's a big difference between you and Wally West. Wally's 10, so his body is responding differently. And also, by the way, I didn't get it as a disease, but apparently
Yeah,
it's a disease.
yeah, I wasn't really sure what was going on with that because it kind of initially plays like, oh, you're a kid, so you're also dealing with, you know, like growing and like puberty or whatever,
Yeah, which makes a
like
certain amount
that
of
kind of
sense. There's
thing.
like there's a logic to that.
So it, you know, throws your powers kind of out of whack.
But yeah,
Um,
he says you know, Wally West is a kid, and so his body is responding differently. That's why it's initially taking him longer to be able to use his powers, and why he's gonna have to stop using them because it hurts him every time he uses them. And then I'm like, but Barry acted like they had exactly the same transformation, and he just remembered it wrong. That was weird.
yeah, well, and then you have this kind of whole thing where Barry goes, okay, um, you know, I'm gonna get you to kind of show your powers, but I'm gonna throw this baseball and you're gonna like run and get it.
Yeah,
And then he kind of runs without really realizing that that's what he's doing.
yeah.
And then it immediately goes into like Kid Flash mode. And I thought that was kind of a little rushed.
Oh, you're saying just all of a sudden he's too good at everything.
Yeah, like it's, you know, we do like
There is
the,
sort of a montage with it though, where he's like, "Well, I hung out with Flash, and then after a while, I was able to do it by myself."
Mhm.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so maybe like because we get the kind of one thing where it's like, oh, I can't vibrate through walls very well, and he can't figure that out. Uh, but it kind of felt just reading it like he just immediately goes into Kid Flash mode where okay, now he's, you know, well, I'm trying to remember. So after he runs, doesn't he immediately run into the first like few criminals that that they stop?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I just thought that was maybe a bit too easy.
maybe it comes with an instinct, like Spider Sense, where you just or like morphing and being able to use your Zords right away.
Yeah, he's got Speed Force.
Yeah, exactly. The answer to everything that we're not getting right off is Speed Force. It's gotta be. Spencer is in the comments, and thanks a lot once again for the request. He says, "Damn, I wish I would have requested both this and Return of Barry Allen." And Remix mentioned Return of Barry Allen as well, because that sort of completes in earnest Wally's origin as the one true Flash.
So I just want to point out that he did in fact say darn, and
Oh,
you made
oh,
it a worse curse word.
oh, okay. Did he? Oh, you're right. He did just say darn. Oh, I thought you were trying to retroactively censor him when you said that.
No, you did in fact actually make that worse for a change.
Oh, okay. Well, and you can tell Austin's very proud of me for doing that.
No, I am.
I turned him into Raphael from the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie.
Damn.
Uh, it's Michael Reed says, didn't a comic do its job if you want more of what it's showing, making you want to read more of the run? Sure, but the problem is simply expectation. If I'm looking at this as the beginning of a run or a good jumping on point for a run, and I can tell that, don't worry, the things that you don't get now, you're not supposed to get yet. They're like Wade's going to make it clear as you go along that I can be patient and I can decide if I want to keep reading to find those things out or not. The problem is I've always been pitched this as a standalone thing. So like I didn't and there's not enough in this that makes it clear A, what I need to know from what came before, and B, what is set up as a mystery.
Yeah. I also just kind of feel like Wade's writing didn't exactly gel with me,
Oh,
so
really?
it just kind of was like, like I don't really need to continue this. But who knows? Maybe if I did, I would be more down with it.
Yeah, like I really appreciate the small, more understated family stuff, and that might be enough to make me want to continue because like the family tree with this is kind of interesting. It's really weird to say it like this. I'm appreciating the kind of mundane stuff, the quote unquote boring stuff. It's not boring, but just that it's not a big soap opera. It's small time, at this point, 1990s, like Midwestern family stuff. And like I said, that resonates with me because that's kind of where I live. I also found this, and Austin and I spoke about this a little bit off camera. I also found this really charming, just aesthetically and the atmosphere of it because this is my era of comics, and I come into this and immediately looking at one page of art could pinpoint it down almost to a year probably. I mean, I was told it was 91, so like I already knew that coming in, but I'm pretty sure I could crack this open right away and go, yep, we're looking at somewhere between 1991 and 1993. This is that Death of Superman era, and this would have come out right around the same time as We're Killing Superman. And there's just something about DC in that period where it feels like that world, and that's where comics start for me, and in a certain way that's where I'll always live with comics. And that's not to say that like everything from this period gets a pass because it takes me back, but because not everything always does in the same way that this did, but this just like I didn't read Flash at this time, but it reminded me. I don't know, like there were several pages where I found myself being transported back to specific times and places where I was reading Batman and Superman and DC stuff specifically, around because I read all this stuff a little bit later, so like around 93, 94. But the other thing too is, and this is all just personal stuff for me, and this might not be interesting to anybody, but this is the experience I had, and why maybe I enjoyed this and appreciated it a little bit more than Austin would. I was the same age that Wally West is as I'm getting into this era of comics. So Wally feels like me to some degree. He's got some of the same like fantasies and dreams and hopes that I might have at that age. Again, he's also living in the same region I did. I also had to contend with weather and potential tornado warnings and things like that. And not to get too personal, but some of the stuff with the parents resonated with me a little bit as well. Again, we don't go deeply enough into all of that. It's a little generic. I do kind of like, again, Unreliable Narrator, that it seems like a bigger problem to him than it would to any onlooker, where it's really just his dad doesn't give him affection, walls himself off from his emotions, doesn't know how to emotionally connect with his son, with his family in general. Austin, I was nothing short of shocked and dismayed when the father walks into the room and smiles and says nice things to the mother. I was like, oh, this situation isn't anything like what we've been led to believe it is.
Yeah, no, no, that is true. So there is like a bit of a, well, he was a kid at the time, so
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, and
My
I
main
like that
issue with the family stuff.
POV is just really strong in this, is what I'm saying.
Hmm. No, absolutely. No, my issue with the family thing is just that it's kind of underdeveloped. But you did land on the best page of the book. Um,
You ready to look at it?
yep.
Okay. So I'm going to break this down. You're talking about the great mistake, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I found this on a second read. Austin didn't notice it. I didn't notice it first time around. This is amazing. So let's break it down. I put this at the end so that I wouldn't show it to you prematurely. Okay, so here it comes. Oh, it's not in there. Did
No,
you already see
you
it?
were just on it.
Oh, you know what? It put it in the proper order. Surprisingly, was I on it?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was on
that's
it.
why I
Okay,
said
pardon me.
you got
Pardon
the
me.
best part of the book.
I thought I was on the page before it, but I wasn't looking at the panel. My mistake.
Oh,
Okay.
no worries, no
So,
worries.
guys, here's what happens. This is very strange, and I'm going to try to highlight it for you if I can bring the right monitor up. Okay, so check this out. Okay, so here's what happens. Austin, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so Wally is upset. He is wanting to run away from his problems, making a big deal out of that as a thematic thing. And he decides to go ahead and try to do that. And so he, like he's not getting along with his father. He decides to run out of the room. His dad bursts in after he's left. He's like knocking, and his dad bursts in and somehow transforms into his son Wally, screaming Wally after himself, who has jumped out the window. Look at this. Somehow the artist has forgotten what character was supposed to be coming through the door? It's amazing.
No,
That
it's
is one of the
perfect.
most egregious mistakes I've ever seen in a comic book.
No, it's like I said to you before the show, it's an 80s cartoon mistake. Uh, like you go back and watch G1 Transformers and stuff like this is happening every episode.
Yeah, I mean, more
Maybe
often
every
it's
minute.
like, more often it's not even this bad though. Usually, because Ninja Turtles would have it too, it'd be like color swaps, and that or it'd
Yeah,
be
all
a
that kind of stuff.
character's voice in the wrong character's mouth. This is a character transforms into the character that he's chasing, and I looked at this for a long time, just stared at this panel, going, "Is there some way that this makes sense and I'm not picking up on it?" Roboter says, "It's amazing no one at DC caught that before print." Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, mistakes happen. This is not me saying the whole book sucks because of this, but
No,
I
just
love
wish someone
finding
got
stuff
fired
like
for that.
this. It's great. I was amazed and excited when I found that gaff in Ultimate Spider-Man. Do you remember that with Venom?
Uh, I
Uh,
don't remember. No, what
where
is it?
their version of Venom. Like, see, maybe I'm
Oh, where he's got the white
remembering this wrong. If memory
spider
serves, it's
almost on it?
their version of Venom doesn't have the Venom thing.
Yeah, he
And
does.
then there's one panel where just suddenly, unceremoniously, it's there. The big white logo across. I was like, why is that there? This is like 10 times crazier than that.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think that's what it is because he doesn't get the white spider until later, um, later into that stuff.
I love it so much. That's
No,
amazing.
it's amazing. It reminds me of that Ninja Turtles bit where I think they're fighting Bebop, and he's like holding a gun, and then like Raphael jumps out, kicks him. Another Raphael comes out, slashes his gun with a sword, and then a third Raphael rolls over,
Wow, that's really
puts a
good.
sigh in his gun. It
I was
reminds me of that.
watching. Are you talking about the '87 cartoon?
Yep.
Because you said Bebop, yeah. I was watching some of that show a couple weeks ago and I saw something like that, but it wasn't quite that crazy.
No, that's one of my favorite bits. After this show, I'll have to send you my favorite Transformers mess up because it's incredibly baffling.
Um, so besides that opening scene, what do you think narratively works best about that? What's your favorite thing about this besides just like a scene?
Um, hmm. I guess I do like the kind of surrogate father stuff with Barry. I do think Barry is a little
Yeah,
bit like bland. Like I don't think he's like especially interesting. But
I agree, and that's what you hear Flash fans always complain about with Barry Allen, and that's why a lot of them were upset when we got rid of Wally West going into New 52 and replaced him with Barry. And by the way, I gotta say, but once again, reading this, I'm like, okay, I mean, like maybe Wally's more interesting than him, but we don't get to see the adult version enough.
yeah, he's just kind of like whiny kid through a lot of it.
When I was growing up, the only Flash I really knew was Barry Allen because I watched the TV show.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah,
for some reason, their Flash is Barry Allen, and you'd think in 1990 it wouldn't be.
yeah. Because in the DCAU, he's Wally.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
weird. I've never
Rosenbaum is
really
voicing
thought
a Wally
thought
West,
about it, but he is Barry Allen in like the second show, so I guess that makes sense.
but he's
But
only Barry Allen in that show because New 52 happened.
no, no, no. I mean like that version of the character, like the original show's Barry Allen shows up in the second show.
Yeah,
He's also Barry Allen. Like it's not like he shows up and he's like, "Oh, I'm Wally West."
yeah, but it's weird because he's also Jay Garrick.
Yeah, and he's also Barry's dad.
He's Barry's dad. For some reason, a lot of unrelated flashes, like unblood related flashes in that universe, look like that actor.
Don't
I
you
don't know
just wish
why.
that Tobey Maguire showed up as his own Spider-Man, MCU Uncle Ben, and Miguel O'Hara?
See, you'd think that when
Wait,
MCU goes to multiverse, they would have learned some lessons from the nonsense that Arrowverse did with it. But no, they did all the same stuff, or a lot of the same stuff, but they're being rewarded for it. They get a $2 billion movie.
I mean, hey, at least they, like I said, they didn't have three different Tobey Maguires show up, I guess.
I mean, at least they, yeah, and at least they didn't have like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man show up and he's like a mass murderer.
Hmm. Yeah, and at
You
least
know,
they don't have like,
there wasn't anything mean-spirited about that movie.
yeah, and at least you can be sure that Marissa Tomei won't show up as a new character in the next season, like the next movie, just because they liked her.
Yeah, yeah, we have to, yeah, because that's that's an old chestnut for the Arrowverse, where you kill off a character, but you like the actor too much, so you got to find a way to bring them back, like we did with Wells six
Hmm.
times,
Yeah.
or however many times we did that. And I guess they did it. Legends is canceled now, but I guess they did it in Legends for a minute too with Constantine. Where, like they didn't want to get rid of that actor, so
Oh,
but
yes, I
they were
remember they
forced to
said
get rid
that
of
in the comments.
Constantine
We did
because
that show.
because DC has their stupid embargo thing if we're doing that character anywhere else, and they're trying to cast a new Constantine for a TV show. That's not happened yet, but that's
Yeah,
why
it's
that
in development hell.
it's in development. That might never happen now, but that was I don't know, but that was the reason that happened. Anyway, we're getting way off course here.
Well, that was one of the like 8 billion projects that J.J. Abrams announced with his like several $100 million deal he made with WB, and none of them have happened.
Yeah. It's like all those Joker movies we were supposed to get. Robotters says, I like both for different reasons, but I don't think Barry is boring. I think Barry gets labeled that because so much time passed without him having stories. I think folks like Dan Torrey would vehemently disagree with you on that and just say that Barry sucks and has never been interesting. But because I've heard that refrain over and over again from a lot of Flash fans. But I don't have a dog in this fight, and I've not read enough. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure it comes down to just the era of comics that Barry started in, where, like I said, a lot of those characters are just kind of hero men. So I'm sure it probably comes down to that.
Can I be really irritating and complain about something else that doesn't work if
Okay, but I'm
you're
taking my headphones off.
thanks. If you're reading this as a standalone thing, and again, maybe this isn't fair because it is part of a bigger run. It was in numbered comics, but then so haven't lots of things been, right? Like, I didn't come into this realizing that. I thought this was going to be more of a standalone thing, like I said. And, and I mean, it's labeled Year One. Batman Year One is a standalone thing. It's in numbered Batman comics, but it's hard to tell when you're reading it if it's even in continuity.
Hmm. Yeah, and I was gonna mention, yeah, that Year One is also like in the actual numbered comics.
So is Dark Knight Returns, though.
Oh, I always forget
Wasn't it?
what?
Was it
No,
not? Maybe it
I
wasn't.
don't think. I
No, it
don't think
wasn't.
so.
And
Those are also
I was conflating that with year one, and then also talking about year one. No, it wasn't. It was by itself,
yeah,
but year one was.
yeah. No, year one is.
Now I'm just
Um,
making up stuff. But anyway, you
I
get
think
to
No Man's Land, not No Man's Land. Old Man Logan, I think, is also an issue um, for the Wolverine book.
you get to the end of what is this? The second issue.
Mhm.
And internal monologue says, to this day, I think of that summer, that partnership, as the happiest time of my life. Too bad it had to end. And the panel we're looking at is Mirror Master standing over what looks like a dead Flash. If you don't know about Crisis, if you've never read, and I don't mean to make Stan Lee's every comic somebody's first comic argument, but, and of course, I knew how Flash died in Crisis, and yet I had that split second where I looked at this and I was like, oh, Barry Allen died by Mirror Master, and I also wondered about it for a second because I didn't know if maybe his death was retcon post Crisis as not being the Crisis thing because I didn't remember, I didn't know, and then some of that started to come back to me, just things people have told me in osmosis and stuff when I was reading, wiki articles and stuff. But I think this is a little teasy and a little gimmicky for anybody that's not familiar with the history because it's the last page. It's a cliffhanger. It really looks like this is how Barry Allen died. And then when you get to the scene where if you're watching this on a TV show, it would feel like the show is trying to tell you Barry Allen died, and then oh psych, he's still alive. He's projecting himself on a mirror and psyching out Mirror Master. And don't worry, kids, this is not how he died. And then if you read this as a standalone thing, you'd be like, okay, but like, how did he die then? Because he's not around, right? So yeah, just more fuel for my fire that this doesn't stand alone great. But also, I'm baffled by why you would end an issue like this if this is only for people that know the history.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and initially I was wondering if we would see Barry Allen's death with Crisis. So I did think we were just kind of building to that. So when I got to this moment, it was like, huh, like that's not how he dies, but like, are we gonna retcon it maybe? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah. So you wondered
Hmm.
about it too, because it feels like a more significant thing than it is. And then by the end, the whole point with Mirror Master is just to have a villain plot in the story somehow. And
Hmm.
so that Wally West has shown some ingenuity and taken down a villain and learned that he can't use his superpowers.
Yeah, yeah,
So that
exactly.
he's got that big self-sacrifice moment at the end, or ostensibly self-sacrifice, where he can go because like I think the whole or part of the point of the tornado scene is I was told to not use my powers for personal gain, but I have to save my father. And so I'm kind of learning this responsibility lesson that like I can't even use my powers because it'll hurt me, but I have to risk that to save my dad. And then again, it didn't seem like all that much of a risk. We also really needed a downtime aftermath scene with him and his dad. I think. Like I'm not sure that just they're walking away and he's like, it's okay. Like, didn't it feel a little bit easy, a little typical, where it's like
No, it absolutely is.
now I care more about my dad because we had this like really easy, contrived, almost died moment.
Hmm. No,
That
I
kind of thing never works
yeah.
by itself.
When I initially wondered if they were going to kill off his dad and it was going to be like the last thing he ever said to him was,
Yeah,
I don't love you. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
kind of some missed
And
opportunities were this its own narrative, but you're stuck with whatever the continuity is.
mhm,
So maybe his dad is still alive in the future. I don't know.
yeah,
You see what I'm
I
saying?
also, if you weren't going to kill off his father, I also would not have him fall like 30 feet and get crushed by a tree. Uh, that's just me.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I would not have him like fall 30 feet and be crushed by a tree.
What's wrong with that?
Because my initial response was, "Oh, he just died. He got crushed by a tree."
Well, but then immediately after that, Wally's like, I'm going to figure out a way to save him. So, like, we know he's still alive.
No, I know, but my response to that was, "What? He got crushed by a tree. He's dead."
Uh, but yeah, like I don't mean to be all pretentious about it. But this was a big thing that we talked about a lot in workshops and lectures and things when I was in college going to writing school, where it's like you don't. It's trite in the same way as characters falling in love because uh because like the guy gets hit by a car and the girl feels sympathetic for him and sympathy for him, and then magically they're in love now, and like that's not a thing to build a relationship on, but like
The
it's
Back to the
easy
Future, Pat.
and it's yeah, but Back to the Future did it on purpose, and
No, no, I know.
the whole point with that was, look, their relationship didn't work out, that's why I love it in Back to the Future.
Hmm.
But their actual relationship is ultimately predicated on his stepping up at the end and doing something heroic and being proactive, and that is a thing that you can build a relationship on. Assuming she is that way too, and she is. But anyway, so when you get to the end of this, it just feels a little bit cheap, and it didn't have to if only I saw it a little bit more of what happens afterwards.
No, I feel like I need more of their relationship before and after that scene. Because what's there, it's just kind of the bare minimum. And I don't know, I didn't really feel the relationship because of it.
Like, I'm praising it for not being over the top and for being kind of a normal situation with the basic kind of uh, conflict that a lot of us have in our lives, but that doesn't mean that I don't need it fleshed out a little bit, you know?
Hmm. No, exactly. Exactly.
But yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, so would you have been fine if we didn't have Mirror Master in this? Like if we did the year one thing and didn't have a like Batman year one and didn't have a costume villain?
yeah, I don't think, or you could have had several that just get fun cameos that Wally West is taking out. Like, we didn't need a
Kind of
villain
do the
plot.
rogues. Hmm.
Yeah, it felt kind of rote, where it's
Yeah.
just like, I kind of like the idea on paper of, let's build a villain plot out of something that seems insignificant, and slowly we find out that all these things are related. But at the end of the day, I was kind of like, okay, but so what about that? Like, we don't spend enough time with it. There's a lot of that in this. I was kind of surprised this was only 4 issues. I think it might have needed six.
Yeah, to flesh it out a little bit more. I agree with that.
I just feel weird being so critical of this because I know it's beloved.
Yeah, I know. They were speed running through the story like the Flash.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And like I said, I like a lot of the writing. I like all the talk about like learning to run your own life and not in again being proactive, not letting other people run it for you. Like we find, I think Wade finds a lot of really cool thematic ways to. Work in like ideas of running and speed and what that means to the character on a personal level, and all that
Hmm.
stuff is really good. Uh, all of the stuff about perception of time, not just generically the way a speedster uh, perceives time versus a regular person, because all of that is kind of standard and been there, done that. Like, what I mean is, this book doesn't deal with a lot of that. It's much more about how adults perceive time versus children, and then how that's uh, the idea that that as a kid you not only feel immortal, but you feel like every day lasts forever. And then if you had Flash's power, how much more would that stretch? But at the end of the day, he still, or the end of the summer, he still has to go home. And so, like, it feels like an eternity, but then it doesn't either. And I really liked the speed powers as a metaphor for that whole phenomenon, for the summer that you wish would never end.
Hmm. No, that works. Um, yeah, some of that stuff. I think like the writing is fine, and then just kind of other things didn't really gel with me as much. Um, I don't know, just like some of the dialogue and some of the scenes, I think. I know, it just kind of didn't really connect. And like I said, some of the things in it were kind of underdeveloped, I thought, like
Yeah.
the family relationship.
Well, and Mirror Master, like, why is he doing
And
anything? I
Master,
don't
yeah.
know. He's a bad guy. That's it. And that's fine if it's just Wally West taking down some bad guys, but the problem is we've been developing this plot over 3 issues, and then we get there, and I'm like, gee, I wonder why Mirror Master is doing this, and if there might be some kind of, like, a character parallel, or mirror, if you will, with our heroes. Nope. I don't mean everything has to fit in some sort of formula, but what's the point in building it over several issues when we finally get it? His motivation is, I'm wearing this costume.
I'm orange and green. I'm evil.
All right, final thoughts before we wrap things up here.
Uh, this book was K, just K, but I would still rather see it be a Flash movie as opposed to what they made or what they're making. So,
Which we may or may not see. No, we'll probably
which
see
you
that.
may or may not see, yeah.
That'll probably happen.
So, there we go.
Well, it didn't make Austin want to keep reading. It made me mildly curious to keep going. But I have to say, Flash is just in general, like, the reason I've never read a lot of this character is just like the concept, and the time I've spent with some of these characters, I've never cared enough about. Like, the first season of the Grant Gustin TV show more or less was fun, but I was mostly in, and then of course it gets really convoluted, but I was mostly enjoying that as a contrast to what we were getting with Arrow, where that kind of had that universe kind of had its Batman Superman finally. And so I really appreciated that, and I was really surprised by their special effects, and it was really nice to watch a show that was just embracing kind of optimistic comic and superhero ideas, where it started from this really angsty thing with Arrow. It's like, okay, we got to do that because Batman was popular, and then we go to Flash, that's the antithesis of that. I'm like, oh wow, we can still make stuff like this. So that's why I was really latching on to that, but I never in comics really latched on that hard to Flash.
Hmm. Uh, no, that is true. And I've watched, technically, I've watched the amount of a whole season of The Flash, but I watched the back half of season 1 and the first half of season 2. Uh,
Oh, so you had a much different experience then.
yeah, exactly.
Robotters, as a Flash fan, it's tough to get into, but once you do, it really is a great addition to DC's main lines. Well, and
Mhm.
might some of it be as superficial as sometimes people gravitate to certain power sets more than others? Like, I know that sounds silly to say, but like, I've never cared about people running fast. Like, that as a metaphor and stuff doesn't do a lot to me, so, or for me. So, when I'm praising that in this, on a like narrative writing level, I'm appreciating all of that, but that's not what's resonating with me so hard.
Mhm. Well, and the Flash and just the speedsters in general are hard characters to write because they can super speed around everybody. So it's hard to kind of create plots for them and villains that aren't also that.
Yeah,
'Cause you have to find some sort of way to have villains that can deal with them.
yeah, because with Superman, and I guess there's a little bit of this too because he can move fast, but conveniently, very often when he could go real fast, he just doesn't. But like with Superman, it's how do you tell stories, again, superficially external plots? How do you come up with a threat for Superman? So not talking about the more human stuff. How do you create threats for a guy who is indestructible? With Flash, it's how do you have a fight scene with a guy that you can't even see most of the time?
Well, and especially when like your villains are, like a telepathic gorilla and like a guy with a cold gun. Yeah, it's like you gotta kind of work that out.
Yeah, that's why it kind of needed Reverse Flash. But then
Mhm.
at the same time, it's like, okay, but once you've got Reverse Flash, uh, it's where do you go from there? Because you're just at some point you end up just creating the opposite power set wise and motivation and everything for your hero, and that's your bad guy. And Flash is, I feel like he's more prone to that than anybody else, but that's probably just because he had a TV show that ran for 8 years and they kept doing that.
Yeah, and they wouldn't stop doing it. No, I think One
But
of
like
the
people
things I
complain about
like.
that with Iron Man. Every Iron Man villain's got to be somebody in an iron suit, and like, but Black Panther's villain is bad Black Panther,
That's
and
because Black Panther has it the worst, where he's literally just evil Black Panther. Like he's got the same costume, but with a color swap. No, I feel like the thing to do with Flash with villains is to do plots that are over the course of like distance. We are like, okay, like this is happening over here, this is
did you
happening over
really
there,
just say
and he's
distance?
yeah, and he's got to like run back and
Oh, you
forth.
mean literally? Okay,
No, I
yeah,
mean literally distance. Like
yeah.
he's got to, like I don't know. Have you ever seen the old Flash canceled game that was being developed?
I heard about that, but was there footage released? I
Yeah,
never
if you
saw
look it
that.
up, you can see a bunch of gameplay of it. It looks pretty cool, but what they did was they have two cities, and there'll be like crimes happening on both, and you got to like run around and like hit all of them, and it's like, yeah, like that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I think some of it at the end of the day is just like people moving fast doesn't do a lot for you. Like there's always a lot of talk from Flash fans. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I mean, I'm sure a lot of Flash fans don't care about that as much as they do character stuff. But there are and people that enjoy both, of course. Like I happen to like Superman's power set a lot. That does have something to do with what's fun about reading that character. And I could say that about a lot of heroes, with um with a lot of Flash fans, it's I hear a lot of debate or discussion about like who is the fastest, or like Wally's cool because he's faster than Barry, and then the TV show would always make a big deal out of like how fast Barry could go, and like he's got to arbitrarily like we've got to push it farther than we've ever pushed it. I'm like, how exactly are we even quantifying this? It always seems so arbitrary to me. So like, I can't get into all of that. Like I
Well,
don't care. It turns into, and I know I'm a big Power Rangers fan, but it turns into the arbitrary nature of Power Rangers powers at some point, where it's like, oh, we need more power. What does that mean? I don't know. Alpha pushes some buttons. We're doing better than we did before. Like it's completely arbitrary.
well, and the writers of the Flash show all wore dunce caps, because you watch that show and it's like, it starts and it's like, I'm Barry Allen, I'm the fastest man alive, and then logo, and then it cuts in and he's like, guys, there's this villain who's faster than me. We gotta work this out.
You gotta stop calling yourself that. Okay, we got a couple of super chats before we end things off here. Josh came into the comments. Hi, buddy. $2 super chat. Who is faster, Sonic the Hedgehog or the Flash? Again, it's arbitrary. I don't know. It depends on the story you're telling. But it's probably the Flash.
No, that's like asking who would win in a fight, the Mulk or the Thung. I don't know. They're both pretty strong.
And of course, yeah, like with all due respect, Josh, because I appreciate the super chat. I
I was
care
just
about.
joking.
I'm sure he is. I care about those kinds of questions as much as I care about who would win in a fight kinds of questions. But just taking
Okay,
it
here's a real question
real
then.
quick,
Okay, yeah.
because I'm not done. But taking it literally, I don't think Sonic has anything like the Speed Force. Like when Sonic's got the Chaos Emeralds and turns into Super Sonic, he's a lot faster. So I'd think by definition, you can still see him when he moves, and he's not breaking the time barrier. So like, even when he's at his fastest, being this is so nerdy, and I don't even like doing this, but it occurred to me, so I'm mentioning it. Even being modified by the crystals that make him go quicker, he's still not like breaking the universe and creating time paradoxes. I don't know if Sonic can time travel. I think that's one of the big kind of litmus tests for how fast a speedster is. Can they use it to go back in time?
Okay, so I'm gonna bring up some core facts where we're gonna break this down. Um, okay, so first of all, the Flash can run fast, but his legs do not turn into like the infinity symbol as he goes. The Flash also does not have a spin dash of any sort.
That's
And
true.
then the other big question is, who is faster rolling, the Flash or Sonic? Because the Flash never seems to roll up in a ball when he moves fast.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That doesn't mean he can't. It might just be a style choice.
No, I know, but if the Flash were to roll, like do you think he would be as fast as Sonic, or do you think that's a spot where Sonic is maybe a little bit better?
I don't know that the rolling has that much to do with the speed.
Ooh, Josh just brought up
Because
a good point, which is that Sonic can travel back in time in Sonic CD.
that's true, but it's modified by a thing he has to spin around.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's yeah, okay. No, that's a good point. And I should have thought of that, and I feel dumb for. But the real question we should be asking ourselves now is, if Flash did roll up at a ball, would we see more Flash pinball games?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Also, if the Flash were to collect 50 rings, could he enter a special zone?
Yeah. I guess he would have to. Uh,
Hmm.
he's playing. It'd be reversed though. He'd have to get all the red spheres, and then
Oh,
they would
yeah.
turn blue when you got them. Anyway,
Mhm.
moving right along. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. David Goyer wanted to make a Wally West movie with Ryan Reynolds as the Flash. Featured the first Flash dying in the beginning of the film 2006 script. Yeah, I've never read that. I
I
remember
didn't
hearing
know that.
something about that at one point, but it's been a long time, and I can't keep track of all the unmade scripts.
Especially Goyer scripts, right? Like, there's a ton of unmade superhero films written by Goyer.
Goyer has written a script for exactly every character you've ever heard of.
No, he even
Name a
wrote the
character,
flat.
Goyer wrote
Yeah,
a script. And I don't mean a treatment, I mean an entire script. He's writing a script right now for something
yeah, no, absolutely.
that will never
No,
get made.
he's currently writing the Safe Space and Snowflake script,
See,
but
I was gonna go for Ambush Bug.
that's a good one. He also famously wrote the Flash versus Sonic movie that never happened.
That's not true.
It could be.
I really don't think Sonic spinning makes him go faster.
No, I know, but the Flash doesn't spin, so I
Okay.
just wonder, like,
Okay.
if the Flash spun, like, how that would impact.
Like it gives you a boost if you're at a standstill, but if you start rolling on a straightaway, it doesn't make you go faster.
Well, and that's the other thing is the Flash has to build up
It
speed.
helps
Like I
you go
said,
down a hill quicker because that's
Mhm.
just physics.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the Flash doesn't have a spin dash move, so he can't just like start fast. Like he's got to build up to it.
Josh, your $2 ruined the last 10 minutes of this video. No, I'm kidding. Trading
They
for
made it
someone that's
so
like,
much better.
why are they just rambling about Sonic right now? No, I actually really enjoyed
Whoa!
that.
Oh no, it's Ezra Miller! Run!
uh, does Reynolds make any more or less sense as the Flash than he would a Green Lantern? Like, I guess it would depend on which one, right? Because the
I
problem
think
wasn't
it
him as a
would
Green
make more
Lantern; it was
sense.
him as Hal Jordan.
But I've also never seen the Green Lantern movie.
Have you not?
No, that's one of my big DC film blind spots. It's really weird. I've seen every Marvel
I
movie,
could almost see him as like Guy Gardner, maybe.
but I've never gone through all the DC stuff. So there's things like that that I just didn't watch at the time and have never caught up on. Like I've never seen Catwoman either.
Oh, we've
I
got to
need to go
change these
through.
things.
Yeah, I know. I need to go through and kind of catch up on some of that DC stuff.
Yeah, you should have told us that. You're losing credibility being on this channel.
Hey, Steel is still the best superhero film ever made. I've seen Steel, so.
Had you seen it before, or did you watch it because I reviewed it? I can't remember.
No, I watched it to do an episode of Who Reviews the Reviewers.
Really?
Like before we ever met. Yeah, you brought back that for season 5.
Maybe you told me that and I
Yeah,
forgot.
and the second episode for it was watch something that came out the year you were born. And I was doing
Oh, and that was the season we had to abandon because we didn't get
yeah.
enough interest, and we did it in a weird format that people weren't real into, and yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
so
about that.
I was doing reviews like a few months before that with a friend, and I was like, "Hey, like, come on over. We're born the same year. Let's review this movie together." So we watched Steel, and then we finished, and he was like, "Hey, I'm really tired. Can we record it in the morning?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." And then when I woke up, he was gone. It's like, "Oh, okay. I
Oh,
guess we're not doing
weird.
that." Yeah,
We do need to do a commentary on that.
Okay, it's going on the
Put
list.
it on the list because we've talked about it. It should be on the list already. Anyway, thanks, buddy. Chewbacca's
Sure.
Lover put in another $5 super chat. We're almost finished, folks. Also featured, he's still talking about that Goyer script. Also featured a scene where he finds Barry's costume by accidentally activating the ring. Also has one last conversation with him via time travel. I'm just reading it as written.
Uh, if Ryan
It's
Reynolds
cool that it had the ring.
was, yeah. Do you think the new movie will have the ring costume?
I think it's
I feel
almost a
like they could
foregone
do it.
conclusion that it will. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'd be
I feel
surprised if
like
it
they're
didn't.
still gonna do like an armored suit coming out of it, but I think we'll get the ring.
Yeah, they could do that. They could try to come up with some kind of like more realistic reason that it works. If you're gonna do it, I think you just go all the way. It's silly. Like, just move
No,
on. Do it
you
or
know what
don't
it'll
do it.
be?
But I would real quick. I think they'll want the big like iconic stuff that people know, and I don't think that you can underestimate at least the early popularity of the Flash TV show. So some of that stuff is now more iconic in the mainstream than it ever was before.
I actually didn't realize the show did the ring.
They did. Eventually they
Okay.
did. Yeah.
You know what I think they'll do in that movie is they'll have it so he presses like a button on his ring and then like armor plates fly out and then they like go onto him like
Like Iron Man.
I like Iron Man, yeah. I think that's what they'll do. Unless maybe not. Maybe they'll go to spandex because it makes more sense for the Flash to wear spandex. You need something that allows you to move, and that's like
Why
the
would you
one
want
power set you wouldn't want armor
why
for.
would you want to wear 75 pounds on you when you're running quick?
Yeah.
Especially when you already have the food problem where you have to eat
Mhm.
calories constantly, which by the way was a Mark Waid thing, and they incorporated that in the Snyder Cut.
Well, and I don't think it's in that movie, but I think Snyder talked about how the Flash's costume is made out of pieces of a jet, and like that's why it doesn't
What?
burn up. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I have a question.
yeah.
What?
I remember hearing about that where it was like I don't know, there was like a jet or something, and he like repurposed it to be his suit so it doesn't burn up when he runs. But like
We're overthinking it at that point.
you're overthinking it at that point. It's like I mean, this is the Snyder cut. Like this is the same movie that was like, oh, the Flash can't like move people because he's too fast. So we have to have like a really awkward scene where the Flash kind of like taps at Iris until she like positions right so we can save her when she's
We're,
flying out of the car.
yeah, we're thinking about it too much.
Hmm.
And
It's like you just
I don't
it's a
understand that
gimmick.
because this is not realistic in any other way.
Hmm. No, exactly.
But anyway, hey, real quick, I had one more question about this book, which I meant to bring up earlier, and one of the
Hmm.
super chats made me think of this. I don't know why, but one of them did. So anyway, let me ask you this. Don't you think that there might have been, and you could say this about a lot of like superhero stories in general, but like with the continuity stuff that Wade is handcuffed with, I think it might have been cool and clever to come up with a with like actual reasons or better reasons for Barry Allen in the past not telling people close to him that he's the Flash. I spent this whole book kind of wondering about that because there's discussion about why he doesn't tell the world about it, where he's like, because for while he's 10 years old, he's not thinking about it. It's not obvious to him why you would want a secret identity, and he almost comes right out and tells Iris. You remember that scene where Barry is like, no, you can't tell her, and he like puts his hand over his mouth and he's like, okay, now look, like you don't have to keep a secret, but here's why I do. And I like that he gave him the choice. That was good. But he's like, why do I keep my identity a secret? He's like, oh, I know this one. You gave an interview once, and it's so the bad guys don't come after your family. But this is that age old question of, yeah, you don't tell the world at large because of that, but why don't you tell certain people that you trust? Are they really going to be in more or less danger not knowing? And like, there's an argument to be had, but he's got a ring on Iris's finger and he's not told her yet. I want to know why.
Hmm. Yeah, because you're a little close at that point to not say anything.
Yeah,
Like that's when it gets weird, right?
that's when it gets almost unethical.
Hmm.
And there's always that kind of ethical murkiness with the secret identity thing anyway, where like it's understandable, but there's a line you have to walk. But yeah, at the point where you're like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, I've not told you yet that I'm a superhero. That's a mistake.
Well, and lying to people I think is cool, but when you're like engaged to them, you probably shouldn't do it when it's that big.
Is that where you draw the line? Not because it's wrong, but because she might break up with you. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, at that point, you should lie then. Uh,
Oh, oh. Okay. I'm getting mixed signals from you here. I'm not sure if I want to live my life based on the Austin strategy, school of thought. Anyway, Bob the Hun put in a $2 super chat and says they let David Goyer pick which Flash, and he chose Wally. We're just all about this old Goyer script all of a sudden.
oh yeah,
But
I
that's
think
interesting that he got to
that's
that he got to pick which one,
hmm.
and then the movie didn't get made. But that's interesting.
Yeah, so if Ryan Reynolds is Wally, who do you think would be Barry at that point? I think they said it was 2006. Who would
I'm
you
no
guess
good
is
at
Barry now?
this. I'm thinking.
Would win in a fight.
I mean, back then, it still would have been a big coup to go back to the TV show guy, but they wouldn't have done that.
Mm.
John Wesley Shipp, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, you probably want like a movie star, right? Like somebody really big that you could, because if he dies at the beginning, then you'd probably want it to be like a Brando kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Obviously
exactly.
not as old as Brando. I don't mean that. Like it'd still be probably like a middle-aged guy, but you'd want in '06, uh you'd want like a Tom Cruise or something. Probably not Tom Cruise, but somebody that
Well,
famous.
Tom Cruise should just play the Flash because he's always running. So no, just say Tom Cruise. I'm good
Okay.
with that.
His name kind of goes with it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, he's cruising around as the
That's not a
Flash.
that's not a bad pig. It is still weird that Tom Cruise hasn't been a superhero yet.
Tom Cruise can actually run, unlike Ezra Miller. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it works.
Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap up here. Thanks a lot for watching. We
Oh
sure
wait, hold
appreciate
on.
it.
Senior Sticks asks if I've
What's
seen
up?
Howard the Duck. I've seen Howard the Duck. That movie's wonderful. That's all. Okay, bye.
Where did he even ask that?
It's like 3 comments above the super chat.
I don't even see that. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get going. We'll be back again. I'll be back tomorrow night for a Captain Logan show. Friday night, Austin and I are doing our regular Friday show, bringing that back, and we're letting the $5 patrons choose what we're doing based on a poll where Austin and I each pick two things, and this time Austin's thing won. I think this is the first time Austin's thing won.
And only barely.
It was tied for a long time between Pirates of the Caribbean and a TOS mini marathon, but Star Trek. But we're going to be doing Pirates of the Caribbean. It might be a blind watch for me. I don't know if I'm going to have time to watch it again before Friday, and I haven't seen it in years. So you'll either get my first time reaction in 15 years, or if somehow I can work it in, I'll actually be prepared. I don't know yet, but Austin knows the movie really well.
Yeah, I know it better than the back of my hand. So
If you would like to make a request for this show, you can go to patreon.com/geekvolution. The $15 tier makes that possible. You can ask for a comic, miniseries, or graphic novel, a pilot for a TV show, or a movie, and it's about a 3.5 to 4 month wait right now. We've got 15, 16 people at that tier, and we do these once a week. Next time, we are doing a
what is
movie,
it?
I believe, and Super Billy asked for a film called The Crying Game.
Oh, I've never heard of that. Okay.
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. So I know nothing. And we like to
I
go into these
believe
things
it has
blind,
something to do with
so
games and crying. So
yeah. It sounds depressing, though.
I don't know. That sounds funny to me.
Anyway, thanks again, everybody, for being here. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Bye, everybody.
See you later, folks.